Greetings YouTube viewers, this is Caleb Buckley and I'm publishing another edition here of Supporting School Leaders. Today's question is, what is a Waldorf school? And I often get this question from people who have studied this topic extensively and maybe struggle to say it succinctly. Or people who have young children and they're looking at, do they want to send their child to a Montessori school, a Waldorf school, a local arts school, independent study, traditional education. So this question is out there among my subscribers of what is a Waldorf school and is it right for my child? Now obviously every Waldorf school is independently run, and so they have their own way of describing themselves and what they offer, and I always refer people to the school in their area so that they can find out how that school has determined to explain what they offer. But here goes my explanation nonetheless. To understand Waldorf education, you really have to understand the philosopher Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner died in 1925. He was 64 years old, March of 1925. And he founded the first Waldorf school in 1919. Now, to understand the founding of the first Waldorf school, you have to understand the time period in which it was created, which was in Stuttgart, Germany, following the Paris Peace Accord, the end of the First World War. It was really a time when all the institutions of Europe have kind of failed, and especially those in Germany, and people were looking at how they could reinvigorate education. And the question came to the philosopher Rudolf Steiner, who had studied in Vienna, had edited Goethe's scientific works in the Weimar city-state, and then later moved to Dornach, Switzerland. And they had asked him, how can we create an education in which something like World War I would not be possible again? His answer, of course, was to direct them to his philosophy of the human being. And then he spent a long time working on an educational model in Stuttgart with teachers and Emil Molt, who was the factory owner of the Waldorf Astoria cigarette factory, to create a school for the workers of the children there. So Steiner's picture of the human being is one in which children are evolving in their consciousness over time. And so you don't treat small children like little adults and give them conceptual work. You allow them to unfold naturally and to focus on their physical development while you're cultivating imagination, creative play, social skills, pre-literacy skills, storytelling. So this sense of imagination and artistry is something that addresses the condition of humanity over time. And one thing that Rudolf Steiner said is that one should educate kindergartners as if you were looking for the fruits of that effort 40 and 50 years later. What would they need to develop into a healthy physical organism before the intellectual work comes in? His furthering picture of the human being is that between ages of 7 to 14, children form their own consciousness, and that it's really through their own feelings that they're able to connect memory to their experience in the classroom. So what does that look like? Well, that looks like children creating their own main lesson books in which they don't use secondary texts, but they create their own style of formative assessments by creating pictures and essays, and every 3 or 4 blocks every 3 or 4 weeks in modified blocks, the children complete these original masterpieces of curriculum that they've been presented by the teacher. It's common for schools to have specialty subjects and have foreign language and music, as well as all the core academic subjects. Now, back in Germany, in the 20th century, many children who were children of workers went into the workforce in after 8th grade. So the first Waldorf school was created with the idea that a child should be exposed to the whole breadth of curriculum by the end of 8th grade. And that includes organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, physics, mythology, geology, life science, history, etc. And then in high school, which was a curriculum that was laid on afterwards, is really a capitulation of that breadth of curriculum, but now at a much more intellectual level. And so we have this expression in Waldorf education that the child is being educated through their head, heart, and hands. And we say that the children do things with their hands first so that they can remember them with their head later. It's the heart where that memory is connected. So I hope that's been sort of helpful. If you look at the Waldorf movement in the United States, we have today about 250 private schools, a little over 100 public Waldorf schools that receive public funds, and probably another 100 schools in North America that don't belong to either the private school organization or the public school organization, but are using Waldorf methodology and have Waldorf trained teachers nonetheless. So if you're looking for a Waldorf education, you really want to think about whether it's a lifestyle and something that you can bring into your home through parent education, and how you're working with your child in a low technology environment, in an imaginative and artistic environment, and that you really want to support them to become creative thinkers, problem solvers, people who really will become Renaissance individuals, and that by the time they get through 8th grade, they really should have participated in a play, copied the works of the masters in art, know the process of knitting and practical arts through printmaking, bookbinding, play a stringed instrument, hopefully have had choral practice, be a good singer, be able to read music, know their history, know their sciences. And so you really are addressing the whole well-rounded human being, and not just the assessed skills. A lot of times people look at Waldorf schools and they find that there is a conscious thread through the curriculum in which the teachers have done two things. They've studied child development in a particular way that gives them an insight to planning lessons so that they speak to the inner experience of the child. Secondly, they've come to know the child over time. The teachers tend to stay with the children through multiple years in a looping system. And that allows them to prepare the curriculum with the child in mind. And really what they're doing here is training their art of observation so that they can observe in the child and draw out of them what they need from the curriculum. One could say that the class is really the curriculum, and it just has to be drawn out of the children and their questions answered. But this, I would say, is key. When you look at other educational approaches, many of them are a series of concepts that are delivered in a specific sequence, curriculum, like a series of obstacles to surmount, like a race to run. In Waldorf schools, what you will find is a curriculum that is based on an awakening consciousness through time, so that it really is tied to the psychology, ability, and capacity of the student. And at that point, the education is brought forth from the teacher as the loving authority with the strong relationship with the students and the parents. So there's my synopsis. I don't know how well I did, but I hope that's helpful, and that's sort of your advanced premiere here from the Supporting School Leaders channel on Waldorf education. Thank you.